Welcome to the Stormsurf Video Surf Forecast for Monday, December 16th. Looking at the current significant wave height chart, this is the 18Z run of the model Monday. There is a developing gale in the West Pacific. Seas are in the 34-foot range, aimed well at Hawaii. Otherwise, it's pretty much high pressure over the eastern half of the Pacific, and nothing else of interest going on anywhere. First up on our tour, we'll take a look at the upper level winds, 250 millibar jet stream level. Of most interest in the West Pacific is strong winds. These are in the 200 knot range, falling into a developing trough in the West Pacific. This is really very supportive of gale development, if not storm development, in this area. Once the jet gets to the date line, it starts to split. Half the stream goes up north into the Pacific Northwest, if not Canada. The other half takes a route over Hawaii down towards the equator, almost splits yet again with some energy pushing up in towards the U.S. West Coast. But the net effect of this overall is high pressure in this area, low pressure here, and that's exactly what we're seeing right now. No storm activity in the East Pacific. Everything's bottled up in the west, and the date line is a brick wall separating the two. Now let's put this into motion, see how this plays out. The trough continues solid, near 190 knot winds into Tuesday. Good rotation around. This helps support storm or gale development down at the surface, and considering the size of 1,500 nautical miles here of area, this should be very conducive to storm development. We'll play this out here into about even Wednesday. There's some support, but then the trough starts lifting up, and notice this huge ridge starts building in the east. And with good wind velocity over the top of the ridge here, that will only support high pressure down at the surface. Also notice there's a bit of a trough pushing down the coast that will usher in a weather change for the U.S. West Coast by Wednesday into Thursday. Continuing to put this into motion, the trough on the west of the date line pretty much moderates out. The big ridge holds, and that's pretty much it in terms of storm development for a little bit. But then you get into the weekend, winds start building again, 170 knots. You've got a bit of a trough starting to develop here off the Kuril Islands. You put that into motion, you noticed it pushes the trough, not so really a defined trough, but we'll call it a trough, with good wind support down here. Pushes to the date line, even a bit east of the date line, which is good. And so the wall, the split point where the jet starts splitting up, now moves to almost north of Hawaii. That's good news, and we're 180 hours out, but still not a whole lot of wind support here, so we'll see how this plays out in some of the other charts. Taking a look now, surface level winds and pressure. Look at this gale. Actually, it's a storm per the models, with a tiny patch of 50 knot winds pushing reasonably well down towards Hawaii, covering the gale itself covers a large area. The winds that are 40 knots or greater, not so much. This has been the story all year of any system. Most of the fetch areas are really tiny or small. This fits into the medium category, which is decent, and again aimed well at Hawaii, but it's not large. Yes, 30 knot winds cover a large area, but real storm production, 35 knot, you get like a 13-second period, and when you get into 40 knot winds, then you're into 14 plus. So this is really the main area of interest. We'll put this into motion now, and this is into Monday, and then even by Tuesday, it's already starting to fall apart. So the strongest part of it in the window that we're looking at here was really starting Monday afternoon and then going into Tuesday, and then there's still continued fetch, but it's not like a fetch that's moving right towards any one target and not capturing the seas that were generated by previous time periods additional energy is not being imparted, so that's what we call virtual fetch, and that we don't really see any evidence that that's happening to a significant degree. Anyway, by into Wednesday, the gale starts falling apart, starting to stretch north, and by Wednesday night, it's over. Strong high pressure here, filling the East Pacific. Continue to roll this out. Notice this strong 35 knot north-northwest winds along the entire California coast. Looks like a wind fest here. Wind swell indeed, but horrendous conditions. Not anything like what we've been experiencing the past couple of days, unfortunately. So we'll roll this out, and here comes the next gale. We saw hints of it in the jet stream. It's forecast by Friday evening, 45 knot winds. Not nearly as big as the last system, but the actual area of strong winds are almost comparable in some ways. And it rolls out. Now this is taking a more flat easterly path, 45 knot winds into Saturday, if not lifting north a little bit, and then sort of stalling, not even making it to the dateline again, stalling and pretty much petering out. But the good news is there is 2 decent size West Pacific gales on the charts, and that's what we'd like to see. So let's take a look at significant wave heights now. What seas are being generated by the winds as they blow over the ocean surface? Here's our first storm we were looking at, 34 foot seas, and here we're going to do this. Great Circle Pass into Hawaii. Watch how this rolls out. There we go. By this evening, you have 38 foot seas, 41 foot seas later tonight, holding, pushing 44 feet into Tuesday morning, late morning, down to 41 foot, and then fading from there. The key point here, and we'll put this back into motion, is notice the trajectory. Starting here, this is what the 298-degree path into Hawaii, Waimea Bay specifically, and you notice it's just pretty much following right on that track between 298 and 292. Right into the islands. The cutoff, I believe, is in the 294 range before Kauai starts shadowing Waimea Bay. So there's some decent energy pushing down to the islands, but notice it doesn't get too close. So the distance here is no closer than 1,700 nautical miles, and most of it's out in the 2,100 nautical mile range. So that's not exceptionally close. The good news of that is whatever swell results will be pretty well groomed. It'll be evened out. It'll be sorted out. There won't be any short period junk in it, but there'll be a bit of a wait between sets because it's not so close that it all bunches up together. So good organization is probably the hallmark of this swell, assuming it plays out as the model suggests. So now we're into Thursday. That system's gone. You'll have swell hitting the islands by Friday and should be pretty decent size. And then here comes the next system, 32-foot seas into Saturday morning building. Not as large. You're in the 30. The aerial coverage here is not a large system, but again, playing into Hawaii. But not so much. Look, it kind of lifts north, and we'll show you where this is all going shortly. But so 36, 38 foot seas, not making it across the date line. Same deal as before. High pressure has this side of the ocean locked down, and that's pretty much the end of it. All right. Now let's take a look at these systems in relation to California, specifically Northern California. Watch how the fetch is moving almost perpendicular to the Great Circle Pass. This means a lot less energy is going to be traveling into Northern California, and for that matter, Southern California. It's pretty much the same deal. So, Hawaii will get solid swell, and you go, oh, they got it. California's going to get it too. Probably not so much. And then even worse is the extreme travel distance into here. You're talking 3,000 plus nautical miles. You're talking one set every 20 minutes if you're lucky. And because of this swell angle thing and it not going up the Great Circle Paths, maybe every other set, every one of those 20-minute sets one of them won't be much of anything, so it's going to be really, really long waits. Still, there should be surf, something to ride, no doubt. Also, check this out. So notice the fetch over California from north winds we looked earlier, 20-foot seas near shore, just basically a mess. So the next system, we saw its trajectory, or not so great trajectory, into Hawaii, but watch this as this starts lifting northeast. It pushes right up the Great Circle paths, 296 degrees into Northern California. So that's good. We'd actually might end up with more surf here. I won't say more than Hawaii, but a decent, more comparable split of energy, assuming all plays out as forecast. Just for laughs, we'll take a real quick look at the JSON2 data from the storm in the West Pacific. Basically, the satellite made no tracks today over any of the main fetch area. This is the closest one, and the only data it was getting of any is not even of interest, but of any height, was that part moving towards Japan. 29-foot peak sea reading, average that was 15 measurements, average of 26 feet. So that's something, maybe some back scatter surf for Japan, but nothing good here otherwise. Just it's hit or miss on whether you get a satellite pass over the storm, and we have not had one yet. Looking long term now, we'll go take a look, see what the Madden-Julian oscillation, El Nino, La Nina is doing. Current daily SOI index numbers 7.73, 30-day average 7.71, 90-day average 3.07. All this is in positive territory, suggestive of the inactive phase of the MJO. And this is pretty much the way it's been for quite a while. We had a little run of negative numbers there for in early December, but overall everything's been positive, which is not good news. Negative numbers is what you want to see. That's what fuels the jet stream. That's what helps produce storms. So this isn't horribly positive, but we have been losing some ground a bit here. So this chart looks at the Southern Oscillation Index, the 30-day average over a couple of years. Here's where we are right now, about like where we've been all year, mildly positive, not a whole lot going on. These dips down into negative or just downward dips tend to be the active phase of the Madden-Julian oscillation. The upward surges tend to be the inactive phase, and that's where we are, is basically a little inactive phase. And just not a whole lot going on. If you want to see El Nino, you want to see these numbers drop down into here and hang there for a while, but that's not what's going on. Continuing on that theme, we'll take a look at surface wind anomalies in the West Pacific. All the anomalies are to the suggested of easterly winds, enhanced trades, high pressure, lack of storm development. This is classic weak inactive phase of the MJO activity. Looking over to the East Pacific, pretty neutral. That's good. This is the pattern that's been in play for a long time now. Nothing particularly strong one way or the other. And looking a week out, more of the same. Weak easterly anomalies over the West Pacific, and pretty much neutral in the East Pacific. So no real change once we get in towards Christmas. Looking at a little bit longer term view, this is outgoing long wave radiation. Basically, it suggests anomalies in cloud cover. The blue is more cloud cover, indicative of the active phase of the MJO. The yellows, reds are a lot of reflectivity, increased trades, a lot of reflection off the ocean surface, suggestive of the inactive phase of the MJO. Per the statistic model here, the inactive phase is to slowly ease east and weaken, allowing the active phase of the MJO to pull into the West Pacific about 15 days out. Unfortunately, the dynamic model has suggested that that's not the case. The inactive phase is basically going to hold its ground and keep the active phase all bottled up in the Indian Ocean. So depending on which model it plays out. So if this happens, you'll get more enhancement for storm development, and we could get into a bit of a pattern. But if the dynamic model proves to be true, then we'll just sort of continue like we are. Even that said, with this pattern, there is storm activity happening. It's bottled up in the west, but we have something going on. So this is not a lockdown indicator. The MJO is not completely locked down as to what's going to happen atmospherically. It just sort of suggests tendencies one way or the other. Looking at the long-range projection in the upper atmosphere, this green is suggestive of winds that support precipitation at the jet stream level, which is, from our perspective, the active phase of the MJO. And it's showing that actually it will make it in some form into the West Pacific by late December, and then sort of traverse into the East Pacific into mid-January. But notice this is the inactive phase. It's supposed to make it into the West Pacific about January 5th or 10th, and then fall apart and follow the same pattern, while yet another inactive phase builds in the Indian Ocean. So all in all, looking over the West Pacific, maybe a bit of a burst of inactive support or inactive phase of the MJO in January, but other than that, it's a pretty weak pattern, and that's the way it's been for months, if not a year or two now. So this is sort of long-term prediction here. Sea surface temperature anomalies. There's some good news here. All summer there was blue, if not dark blue, streaming water running from Peru over the Galapagos, east, almost making it to Hawaii, suggestive of almost like a mini little La Nina. And that energy or that influence gets imparted in the atmosphere and sort of sets up like a mini La Nina sort of pattern. That has broken down. There's some really good signs here. There's warm water, not great warm water, but anywhere from 0 to half a degree, if not maybe a little bit more, off of Chile, off of Peru, all the way across the equator. This is the main region here you want to monitor, and if anything, the bias is warmer rather than colder. And this set started in sometime in October, so that's suggestive that by maybe late December, early January, you're going to get a little bit more energy showing up in the jet stream, and that will actually help fuel storm development in the North Pacific. Otherwise, we have this standard pocket of warm water that's been lingering between Japan and California for a couple of months now. It actually made some inroads into Northern California for a little while, but it's been rebuffed because of high pressure. I mean, there's this constant offshore flow going off of Central and North California. That's reflected in the cool water temperatures. They're in like 50 degrees. 50 even, or 51 off of San Francisco. And there's a bit of this, upwelling pattern that continues to show. It's not bad. It's nothing like it was during La Nina, but it's there. And there's sort of almost a mirror pattern going on here off of southern Chile. Sometimes you look for teleconnected mirror patterns off of Africa too, and warm water all in the same place as you have here. During La Ninas, you get cold water here. You also see it sometimes pop up off of Africa. So in all, there's not a strong pattern one way or the other, but the bias, it looks, is towards warmness, which is better. I'll take that over coldness any day of the week. And then finally, the subsurface water temperatures. So this is the West Pacific here. This is the East Pacific on this side of the chart. This is spanning the equator a couple of degrees either way, 2 north to 2 south. Here is the actual temperatures. Here's the anomalies. This is what we've been watching, this little 2-degree pocket here. This is actually a Kelvin wave that started in the West Pacific, west of the date line. It was in October or maybe even September. Westerly wind burst started pushing warm water down across. It's made it the whole way across the Pacific, and it's getting ready to start impacting the Ecuador coast. It will gurgle to the surface and then sort of retrograde back along the surface. The point being, this warmer water here will feed the warm waters that are already in place over the Galapagos. Not much. It's not a big pocket of warm water, but that'll at least help maintain the warm water pool off of Central America and help to impart a little energy into the atmosphere. So that's good news. So cautiously, the latter half of the winter is looking better than the early half of the winter in terms of storm production and swell development. So wrapping it all up, one gale, pretty good size in the West Pacific, targeting Hawaii. Another gale forecast behind that, probably favoring California more, but closer to Hawaii, so maybe a split in the swell sizes, assuming it even forms. So that's good. There's two systems on the charts, and that's all we can ask for. Long-term pattern is looking better, and not great, but better than it has been. So maybe towards the latter half of the winter we'll be in even better shape. So that's it for this week. Hope you enjoyed it. Thanks for viewing, and we'll do this again next week. Thank you.